Mr. Zeldin, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in their water. Maybe you would give a damn instead of coming in here and suggesting that any grant that takes lead out of the water must be waste, fraud, or abuse because you need
time has expired.
the money for a tax cut for rich people because you're totally beholden to the oil industry. You could give a rat's ass about how much cancer your agency causes.
Representative Adam Schiff didn't just bring facts to a debate. He brought a bulldozer. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're analyzing a masterclass in holding powerful people accountable on the spot. We're diving into a catastrophic 55% budget slash aimed at gutting the EP, a move Administrator Lee Zeldin clearly wasn't ready to justify. This goes far beyond typical Washington bickering. It's a surgical teardown of a bureaucrat who is actively dismantling the very rules designed to keep citizens safe. Make sure you watch to the end. The exact second Zeldin gets trapped, tries to throw a petty insult, and catches Schiff's absolute fury regarding lead poisoned kids is destined for the history books. Drop a sub and let's roll the tape.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Zeldin, you've only been at the EPA for a few months, but in that time, you've done more to dismantle this agency than probably all of your predecessors put together. That may be a source of pride for you, but it is not for the American people.
Let's freeze it here to appreciate Schiff's opening move. He isn't asking polite questions, he's delivering a formal charge. Typically, when agency directors testify, they anticipate gentle inquiries or broad philosophical debates. Schiff skips the pleasantries. He immediately locks down the time frame, noting Zeldin has only been there a matter of months. That specific detail frames the entire showdown. Schiff is explicitly calling out a targeted, high-speed talk-down of the agency, rather than just normal administrative changes.
You've unlawfully terminated grants without justification. You've fired and pushed out some of the best scientists who inform EPA's decision-making. You refuse to spend money that Congress has appropriated to the EPA by law. And you've launched a pro-polluter effort to delete dozens of environmental protections. On top of all this, you've launched an effort to overturn California's Clean Air Act waivers that improve the quality of air breathed by 40 million Californians and by millions more in other states who have adopted California's high standards. That effort, for which my colleagues have decided to eliminate the filibuster to achieve, is not exactly what anyone would call cooperative federalism.
Forget cheap gotcha tactics. Schiff is cementing cold, hard facts directly into the official record. Let's unpack this because major news outlets largely glossed over it. First, there's the refusal to deploy funds already approved by lawmakers. According to the Constitution, Congress controls the budget. The executive branch, which Zeldin serves, isn't legally allowed to just withhold environmental cash because their corporate backers object. Doing so breaks the Impoundment Control Act. Second is the push to strip California of its strict emissions rules. Zeldin isn't chasing efficiency here. He's actively trying to make 40 million people inhale more pollution, just to pad the profit margins of fossil fuel and auto giants. The foundational rule is simple. A government agency exists to safeguard the citizens, not to sabotage itself for the benefit of corporate lobbyists.
But it's your budget that's the ultimate proof of your priorities. You propose cutting America's environmental agency by 55%, meaning that in your view, and that of President Trump, more than half of the environmental efforts of the EPA, more than half of the efforts to make sure Americans have clean air and clean water are just a waste. They're just a waste.
Let's put that massive 55% reduction into perspective. Slashing the military budget by that much leaves the country entirely vulnerable. Cutting the FAA by 55% means airplanes are no longer safe. So, what is the result of carving out 55% of the EPA? Regulatory watchdogs lose their jobs, water quality checks stop, and major polluters operate without oversight. As Schiff points out, Zeldin's underlying rationale is that he's fine erasing these protections because he considers safeguarding human life to be a waste of resources. Pay attention to how Schiff seamlessly transitions from boring financial figures to the terrifying human toll.
When they drink a glass of water, they may not be able to see it, But this water that Americans drink is going to have more chemicals like PFAS, forever chemicals in their water. This will be your good work. I want to be very specific about the legacy you're going to leave if you're successful in eliminating half of our efforts to clean our water and our air. Your legacy will be more lung cancer. It'll be more bladder cancer. It'll be more head and neck cancer. It'll be more breast cancer. It'll be more leukemia and pancreatic cancer, more liver cancer, more skin cancer, more kidney cancer, more testicular cancer, more colorectal cancer, more rare cancers of innumerable varieties.
Schiff just laid out the literal body count of stripping away regulations. He brought up PFAS, widely known as forever chemicals. These synthetic compounds don't degrade in the environment or inside our bodies. Instead, they build up over time and trigger the exact horrific types of cancer Schiff just listed. Slashing the EPS funding in half isn't about trimming the fat. It's about bulldozing the final wall, protecting your tap water from toxic corporate runoff. Schiff is making Zeldin look directly at the lethal consequences of his agenda.
My kids are going to be breathing that air just like yours. My family's going to be drinking the water just like yours. We may not be able to pinpoint just who gets cancer because you've done away with half the budget of those looking out for our clean water and clean air. But it's going to be somebody's kids, it's going to be somebody's family. To put this in more specific terms, there are 22 grants frozen by the EPA focused on improving health and reducing pollution, many of which directly impact children. For example, one project in Santa Ana, California, provided funding to help detect and prevent lead poisoning in children. According to the census, about 10% of the population in Santa Ana are under the age of 9. With a population of about 310,000 people, that means that 31,000 children are at risk.
Here's how you hold the untouchable accountable. Take a massive, abstract issue and make it hyper-local. Zeldin can easily go on cable news and rebrand a 55% slash as saving taxpayer money. What he can't spin away is the fact that 31,000 kids in Santa Ana are facing lead exposure. Lead poisoning in youth leads to permanent brain trauma and permanent developmental issues. The administration actively halted money meant to keep those specific children safe. Schiff lays a flawless trap. What possible issue could you have with stopping kids from drinking lead? If Zeldin tries to defend it through policy, he confesses that cash matters more than children. If he refuses to answer, he admits guilt. Nah, watch how a bureaucrat reacts when backed into an inescapable corner.
Senator, who is the grant applicant?
This is to the city of Santa Ana.
You have the biggest,
And are
you have the
you-
biggest
are you-
state, so
and
we're
are
going to have to
you-
go through every single list of the grant.
Well,
By the way, with that wind up, by the way, I understand that you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why.
Oh, yeah.
Just observe Zeldin's physical cues here. He stumbles over his words, refuses to make eye contact, and tries to dodge the question by arguing California is simply too large to monitor. Then, the peak of hubris hits. He labels a sitting representative who is holding literal statistics about 31,000 endangered kids a fiction writer. Zeldin gives a little smirk, clearly believing he just delivered a clever soundbite. But he completely miscalculated the situation. Schiff refuses to yield an inch. He detonates, and honestly, the anger is 100% warranted.
Well,
By the way, with that wind up, by the way, I understand that you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why.
oh, yeah. Well, I understand your view that you can cut half of the agency and it won't affect people's health or their water, their air. That, to me, is a big fiction, Mr. Zeldin.
You
And
forgot about the fact of cleaning up
I have to
after the
think,
LA
Mr. Zeldin,
wildfires
I think,
or
Mr. Zeldin,
president when I was in San Diego.
if your children were
With the
drinking
Tijuana
water,
River sewage crisis,
if your
apparently we're
children
going
were
out on our
drinking
own for
water
that.
in Santa Ana, Mr. Zeldin, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in their water. Maybe you would give a damn instead of coming in here and suggesting that any grant that takes lead out of the water must be waste, fraud, or abuse because
The
you
gentleman's
need
time has
because
expired.
you
Who said
need
that? The whole
the
thing,
money for a
everything
tax
you
cut
said,
for rich people
your time. It's all
because
make-believe.
you're totally beholden to the oil industry.
The
This is
gentleman's
why-
time
You could give a rat's ass about how much
It's
cancer
because
your
people
agency
you're trying to
causes.
destroy.
Profanity like that is virtually non-existent in formal congressional settings. It entirely breaks the traditional rules of politeness. Yet, you know what a much bigger moral failure is? Forcing 31,000 kids to ingest lead just so billionaires can get a tax break. Schiff delivers the final, crushing blow, the brutal truth that the people making these decisions don't have to watch their own children drink toxic water. When the head of the EPA shrugs off child poisoning just to land a petty jibe, the illusion of acting in the public interest vanishes entirely. This is exactly why elites hate oversight. It was never about saving money. The reality is that exposure is the ultimate weapon against corruption. By calling out Zeldin's subservience to big oil, Schiff is fighting to reclaim the government's true purpose from a system that functions solely as a bodyguard for massive corporations. The Kortaki way is undeniable. True justice cannot survive behind closed doors. Cutting the agency by 55% and withholding lead prevention money shows that the current leadership is offloading environmental damage onto the public while securing profits for the top 1%. So, what are your thoughts? Is it acceptable for an EPA head to block clean water funds to help pay for elite tax cuts? Does this showdown make you trust our system more or less? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's hold these officials accountable. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Today, we are diving straight into one of the most blistering reality checks at the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Adam Schiff, a battle-tested former federal prosecutor, goes head-to-head with Westerkamp, a judicial nominee tapped by President Trump for a lifetime appointment of immense power. The core issue of this hearing boils down to one single fact. This judicial nominee has never personally tried or defended a case before a jury. But instead of owning up to her lack of experience, she uses every lawyerly semantic trick in the book to cover it up. She uses grandiose words to polish up a supporting role, trying to blur the lines between watching someone else do it and doing it yourself. But she picked the wrong opponent to play word games with. The 5-minute video we are about to dissect is truly a masterclass in cross-examination. We're going to pause at each key moment to see how Schiff sets the trap, cuts off the nominee's escape routes, strips away the sophistry layer by layer, and ultimately exposes the true qualifications of someone about to take one of the most powerful seats in the justice system. Without further ado, let's jump into the first clip. And I want you to pay close attention. Watch how Adam Schiff sets a perfect trap with what seems like a harmless HR question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few questions. Ms. Westerkamp, are you familiar with the term Performance Improvement Plan, sometimes referred to as a PIP?
Yes.
Would you agree that employees subject to a PIP are essentially being notified that some aspect of their performance is unacceptable?
Yes.
Have you ever been subject to a performance improvement plan in your time at the Department of Justice?
No, sir. Senator, I've received excellent ratings.
So there's never been any issue your superiors or supervisors have had that required anything like a performance improvement plan?
No, Senator.
Let's pause right here. If you aren't familiar with legal tactics, you might be asking yourself, why is he asking about a PIP, a performance improvement plan? Is he trying to dig up dirt on whether she was a bad employee? Absolutely not. Schiff knows full well her record is spotless. What he is doing here is a classic prosecutor's technique called locking in the witness and establishing a baseline by asking these questions. Schiff is giving Westerkamp the floor to confirm herself that she is an excellent employee, does exactly what she's told, and is perfectly capable of handling the paperwork in her current role. Why? Because Schiff wants to completely eliminate the "I was unfairly evaluated" maliciously excuse. Schiff is essentially saying, I acknowledge you are an excellent desk lawyer. You draft documents very well. Your bosses love you. But being a stellar office worker doesn't mean you can become the CEO. And being a great desk lawyer is never enough to become a trial judge presiding over a courtroom. Watch how Schiff immediately pivots from this implicit compliment into a direct assault.
Thank you. Lane, I want to ask you about your experience trying cases. Have you ever tried a case to a verdict before a jury?
Senator, I've worked on a bench trial, and as a federal law clerk, I handled 7 trials.
I was a federal law clerk as well. I wouldn't say that I handled the...
Ouch, that is a bucket of ice water thrown right in the face of academic arrogance. Let's parse the word handled. In the legal world, when you say I handled the case, that carries a lot of weight. It means you were the one mapping out the strategy. You were the one standing up in court, making the arguments. and you were the one holding the ultimate responsibility if your client got sent to prison or lost everything. Westerkamp, in an attempt to paper over her lack of real-world trial experience, used the word handled to describe the job of a law clerk. Let me explain the position of a law clerk clearly for you. It's a highly prestigious role, usually reserved for top-tier graduates from elite law schools. But what is their actual job? They are apprentices. They research case law, they prepare briefs, they write draft opinions for the judge, they sit in the courtroom in a safe little corner and watch everything happen. They do not open their mouths to argue. They do not get objected to by opposing counsel. They do not have to look a jury in the eye and persuade them. So Adam Schiff doesn't let her get away with this linguistic abuse. With one gentle sentence, "I was a federal law clerk as well," he disarms her instantly. He reminds her and the entire Senate that a clerk is just someone passing papers. The judge is the one who handles the trial. Don't try to wear a coat that's 3 sizes too big for you.
Trials, I think the judge handled the trials. But let me ask you about your experience with the bench trial. Were you the lead counsel in that case?
No, Senator, I was part of a small team of attorneys.
And were you the senior associate counsel on the case?
Yes, Senator, I was an associate on the case. There were 4 attorneys on the case. I was responsible for helping prepare witnesses, helping second chair depositions. I also took a deposition myself. I cross-examined a witness at trial, and I was responsible for all the pretrial and post-trial briefing, findings of facts, conclusions of law.
And of the 4 attorneys, how many were more senior to you on that team?
Senator, I believe 2. There were several people who came in to assist, but again, my responsibilities, I was the primary drafter for all the briefing.
No, I heard that. I just want to understand. So your trial experience consists of being the second or third senior lawyer on a bench trial.
This is exactly why you never play word games with a former prosecutor. Schiff is applying the peeling the onion tactic. With every question, a layer falls away until the naked truth at the core is exposed. When the clerk label was busted, Westerkamp retreated to her second line of defense. "I worked on a bench trial." For those who don't know, a bench trial is a trial where the judge alone issues the verdict with no jury. It's less psychologically stressful, much heavier on legal and technicalities, and requires absolutely zero crowd persuasion arts. But Schiff doesn't stop there. He asks, "Were you the lead counsel?" "No." "Were you the senior associate?" "I was an associate," a relatively junior title. "How many people were your bosses on that case?" "I believe 2. Listen closely to what she lists as her trial experience: helping prepare witnesses, meaning prepping them backstage; second chair depositions, meaning sitting as an assistant and taking notes; and primary drafter for all the briefing paperwork. Yet again, Schiff summarizes her entire career portfolio in one razor-sharp concluding sentence. Your trial experience consists of being the second or third senior lawyer out of 4 on a bench trial. The terrifying part here is that this woman is sitting there asking Congress to grant her the power to preside over thousands of complex jury trials for the rest of her life.
All the briefing.
But you've never done jury selection, never done voir dire, for example.
When I was a law clerk, Senator, 5 of the trials before the judge who I clerked for were jury trials, and so I had the opportunity.
And I was a law clerk. It was a great experience, but I didn't pick the jury when I was a law clerk. I didn't question the jurors. I didn't seek to use a peremptory or other challenge for cause for a juror. That's really not the role of a law clerk. You observe it, but you don't do it yourself. And so have you, apart from the bench trial, have you cross-examined witnesses in any kind of other jury trial or any jury trial?
Senator, in that case, I cross-examined a lay witness. I also deposed an expert, and I was...
Never before a jury. Have you ever found...
This is the crux of the entire hearing. The term voir dire in the American legal system, voir dire is the process of jury selection. Lawyers for both sides ask everyday citizens questions to sniff out bias, uncover hidden prejudices, and decide who will determine the fate of their client. It is a peak psychological art form. You have to read body language, you have to know when someone is hiding something, and you have to make a split-second decision to strike someone from the pool. This is the skill that separates a courtroom gladiator from a legal bookworm. When Schiff points his spear at this weakness, Westerkamp does the worst possible thing. She pulls out the law clerk label as a shield again. Her answer implies, "Because I sat and watched the judge and other lawyers do voir dire 5 times. I count that as my own experience." Schiff's pushback here isn't just an exposure of one individual. It's a visible frustration. with an entire generation of lawyers who have never smelled gunpowder but want to be commanding generals. You observe it, but you don't do it yourself. Let's apply this nominee's logic to other professions. Would you get on a plane where the pilot says, "I've never flown it myself, but I sat in the jump seat and watched the captain do it 5 times"? Would you hand your life savings over to an investor who has never placed a trade themselves, but only fetched coffee for Wall Street brokers? Of course not.
Filed or argued a motion to eliminate?
Yes, Senator. I've, in that matter, handled several motions in limine as well as in other matters, particularly at preliminary injunction stage. Some of the litigation I've been involved with has had extensive evidentiary records at the preliminary injunction stage. So I've filed and handled several motions, many motions in limine, Senator.
Many motions to eliminate in that one bench trial.
Yes, Senator. In that one bench trial, I handled several motions in limine, but I've also handled motions in limine in other litigation, again, more at the preliminary injunction stage, seeking to establish a clear record going into a preliminary injunction hearing where there may be live witnesses, evidentiary issues, kind of at that initial stage.
Okay, thank you. I'm not trying to denigrate your experience as a law clerk. I think it's a great experience, and I highly encourage those graduating from law school to pursue clerkships. But having tried cases as an assistant U.S. attorney, it's not the same thing to observe them and to do them yourself. I'm sure you would agree. But thank you. I appreciate it. And Mr. Chairman,
A motion in limine is a pretrial motion submitted to the court, usually to request that certain evidence be excluded. It is, once again, entirely paperwork. It is argued in front of the judge, not a jury. Westerkamp clings to motions in limine like a final life preserver to prove she did something litigation related. But Schiff drops a line that deflates that preserver instantly. All of that paperwork she only did for one single case. And it was a case without a jury in that one bench trial. Schiff's final remark: it's not the same thing to observe them and to do them yourself. That puts a period on the end of the interrogation. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He doesn't need to pound the table. The truth is brutal enough on its own.